Welcome to the Financial Literacy Talks. Today we have J. Michael Collins from the University of Wisconsin-Madison talking to us about financial literacy among adults. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
So, Michael, why is the evidence of the impact on financial education on behavior so thin? Why do we have so few studies on the effect of financial education?
It's a great question, and it comes up every time I talk about financial education with adults. Why are there only a handful of studies? And I think the reality is that as researchers, we've focused a lot on other forms of education, other forms of economics, but not as much on the effects of financial education. There are not a lot of funding resources, and there's not a lot of departments that study financial literacy. We need to do more, and so I think I've hopefully contributed something to this literature, but I think we need to see more researchers and more studies like these going on.
How is financial education different from other forms of education?
Financial education is a unique aspect of how we all learn. There are some core skills we need to learn about budgeting and managing credit and those kinds of things, but it's also very dynamic. It changes over your life course. When you're in high school, you probably don't need to know a whole lot about mortgages. When you're in your 30s, you need to know a lot about mortgages, and so these change over time. And so it's something that we learn the basics of and then have to build on really through our entire lives, even into old age and how we manage our money in retirement. So it's very contextual, and it depends for each person really on where they are in that life course.
One of your projects is about online financial education for teachers. Can you describe the project and how the teachers responded?
We're excited about any kind of work with teachers because we think that the more financially literate, the more financially savvy teachers are, the more it can be part of their education, whether they're an English teacher, a math teacher, any kind of teacher, social studies teacher, it could be part of their curriculum. The trick is, how do we get that in front of teachers? It's not usually part of the curriculum for a teacher training college. How do you teach financial education? And so we did an online education session for teachers where they could learn about managing their own money and then apply it to their teaching. But only about one in four of those who were offered it took it on, and so we've asked ourselves really, why didn't we get a higher take-up rate? And some reasons are that teachers that we looked at tended to be older. Many of them had spouses who managed the money. Many of them had pension plans and weren't too worried about money. But the bottom line for almost all of them was they didn't have time. There's a lot of demands on our teachers. They are involved in the classroom every day, and for them to take out time to do a 10-hour class online was just too much to ask. And so I think as we think about financial education, whether it's for teachers or anybody else, we have to bear in mind that it has to be something that's convenient and easy and accessible and effective. And so oftentimes I think we put too much weight on projects where the intervention, the education itself was really hard for people to get through. And so when we don't see effects, we have to bear in mind that it may be that it wasn't well-designed education curriculum.
Your other project is on financial literacy among adults, but this time looking at people in subsidized housing. And what are your findings there?
Yeah, so another exciting project I'm involved in is where we are, you want to think about where people really need to understand how to manage their finances, and it might be people who are in public programs, who are in subsidized housing or other kinds of public assistance. And so here's a case where we were able to take everybody who was in a program and expose them to a financial education class, a 10-hour class where they got strong support to be there, including childcare and food and transportation. And what we hoped to find was that people would learn from that, and we do find that. They show not only that they learned about basic financial management, but they are engaging in more planning and budgeting and those kinds of tasks. We thought we might see them saving more, and we don't see that. We actually see them borrowing more, which some people may think is interesting or maybe surprising. But you think about it, if you're low income, one of the things you may learn to do is manage your credit and to get access to more credit, and that may be what you really need to invest in activities for your kids and those kinds of activities. And importantly, we don't see more defaults. We don't see a worsening of these people's credit scenarios. So they got access to credit and they managed it well. So we take that as a good outcome.
So you're presenting several papers today, and what are the main takeaways of the research that you are presenting?
I think one of the main takeaways is that a carefully designed financial education program with a carefully designed research framework that really tries to get a good comparable group and measure good data can show effects. It can show effects on knowledge. We certainly see it across studies. And it can show effects on behavior like planning. Thinking about whether it's retirement or budgeting, those are all tasks that people learn to do through these kinds of classes. And we even see effects on behavior, whether it's saving to retirement, or managing credit better. So we do see behavioral effects. And we need to bear in mind these are pretty small interventions, and the longest one was 10 hours. So the effects are relatively small, but imagine if you did 10 hours every year. Imagine if this was on accumulation of knowledge over time. So I think oftentimes we need to think about education in probably a broader scope of the other activities that are involved in people's lives.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks very much for having me. It's been an honor.